Jordan, and this is Yes, But Why podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, my day job, I like to say my Clark Kent job. I'm a software engineer, and I've been doing that for the last 10 years, pretty much. So I think I spend a lot of time, I invest a lot of time in that field. And the last 5-6 years when I started doing improv, I kind of like fell in love. It was instant love that I felt. And progressively, I realized that I want to spend more time, again, not spend, invest time learning and getting better at it. And when I moved to New Zealand 3 years ago, I started doing it more professionally. I joined a local group. I started my own group in Spanish-speaking group, and I started attending to festivals and I thought maybe I can do this for a long time. And I decided to save a lot of money and just spend hopefully a year just traveling around and attending festivals and hopefully also running workshops and directing my shows. And so far, so good. It's been a really great experience. And I'm aware that a lot of people is doing that. Actually, I met a lot of people in different festivals doing the same. And I'm also learning from them, from their experience, how they handle these kind of trips and how they can make it profitable as well. It's not an easy journey, but I think that it's really worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually only, I know that it happens, but I never talked to anybody who traveled and did workshops and stuff like that until I started doing these phone interviews, talking to people internationally and people saying like, oh yeah, I went to this festival like halfway across the globe and, worked on whatever. I was just like, what? How do you do that? So yeah, it's a fascinating thing to hear people talking about being able to do that. It's like, it seems so magical to really be able to travel. I mean, like, I'm just taking my first foray into taking a trip out of my state to another state to teach a workshop. I'm all like, ooh, I'm doing it. But I haven't yet traveled outside the country. Maybe that would be another New Year's resolution. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be, yeah. I think that you should do it I think our generation kind of like had a chance to follow your passion in a way. I think that for maybe previous generations didn't have the chance. I think that they were just meant to finish their studies, join a local company or factory, and then spend 20, 30 years working there, and that's it. And then you retire, and that's it. I think that now we have more opportunities to discover what we love, what our passions are about. I discovered this passion when I was around 23 years old. So not in an early stage. And I've been really lucky to be able to follow it and to allow it to take me to different places in the world and to meet really amazing people.
Yeah, absolutely. You started doing improv when you were 23, 24, you said? Where was your first class? What was your first experience?
Well, it's actually quite funny. I was coming back from a long trip overseas, just like backpacking Europe and the US as well for almost like 8-9 months. And I came back to my hometown and I was so bored. It's like I know everything around here, like everything it's old. And I want to keep trying new things. And I remember my mom told me, I'm actually attending to the shows on Sunday nights. To a theater, but it's no scripts and it's comedy and it's fun. You can come with me next time if you want. Like, yeah, why not? And then, that's how it started.
I love that it's your mom. She's going to these improv shows. That's so fun.
Yeah. She was going with a friend. She was having a lot of fun. And one Sunday, I just tag along, and we went to this small theater and it was this like kind of like a theater sport kind of match. And I was like, wow, this is great. And I really liked it from the beginning. And I kept going for, I don't know, for maybe a month or something like that. And I started thinking that, I think I can do this. I think I can be on stage doing this. And lucky me, they opened a workshop for beginners. And I started like that, just attending this workshop. And eventually I just joined this theater sport show in a couple of years. And I was part of that group for almost 2 or 3 years.
Wow. What was the name of the theater?
It's a newspaper. Actually, it's a newspaper theater called Adolfo Calle. It's the newspaper is called Los Andes, which is probably one of the biggest newspapers in my hometown. And they have kind of like their own theater. It's a really old traditional theater in my city.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah.
How long has the theater been doing the theater sports style improv shows?
I would say like 9 years.
Wow.
Yes, it's every time I talk about this, it's amazing because we don't know about Keith Johnston. We don't know about Dave Kloss. We don't know about all these gurus in the Anglo-Saxon improv world. We don't know about them. It's starting to get popular right now when people start traveling and bring different ideas and books. But back then, we didn't know about them. We have our own teachers and our own gurus, like Latin gurus about theater. And I sense a lot of difference between the Anglo-Saxon improv world, which is more, I would say, more based in stand-up comedy. For us, it comes more from a theater, from a drama school. And this show has been on for around 8-9 years. But before that, it used to be another show. I think it was for 20 years. And it's like a Wednesday night show. It's like classic. It's a tradition back in my home city. And every Wednesday night, it's like a bar with, I don't know, like 40 or 45 tables. It was packed every Wednesday. And it was pretty much about games and improv games, just games, not like a theater sport thing, but just games. And games that I've never seen in other festivals or shows in the world. So it's like a completely different school that we have. And it's so different, and it's so great to be able to learn from different schools in the world.
So then you're doing this particular style, but not with any reference to Keith Johnstone or how it got started. It was just sort of like, it makes me feel like it was the art form existed first and then Keith Johnstone second. You know, like he was like, hey guys, did you know that there's this thing? And everyone was like, yeah. And he's like, cool, I'm going to write a book about it. And they're like, sounds good. Like, like it's just really interesting because I've heard other people who, you know, like don't have anything in their town and they like find a book or they like went to a theater festival and then they come home and they're like, hey guys. But, you know, it's really great that the way that you see it has its own, like the way you have been taught and experienced improv seems to be your own Argentinian thing. And now you can share it, especially now that you're on your journey across the world. You know, you can share all those styles. Is that the kind of style that you are focused on now?
Yeah, I think that's, there's a lot of Latin gurus right now that are probably around their 40s or 50s, like Omar Galvan or Felipe Ortiz, Gonzalo Rodolico. They're guys that they learn from the best around the world as well. For example, Omar is traveling the world doing improv for the last, 10, 15 years. And he also keeps carrying this flag about Latin school. And he's doing a great job working with Latin writers as well, with different kind of books and poetry, and trying to mix that with improv as well. And that's amazing. Every time I take a workshop with him, it's magic. Actually, it's called one of his workshops is called something about magic, and he uses this Latin literature to introduce it in improv, and it's great. But for example, in my hometown, there's one of the biggest reference is an actor called Ernesto Suarez, El Flaco. That's the next nickname. And he probably is around the same age as Johnson. And he pretty much started this Wednesday night show that I mentioned a long time ago. And he's been working in comedy and theater. And to be honest, I haven't been able to ask him, but I don't know if he knows about Johnson or the reference in the Anglo-Saxon improv world.
That's interesting.
But he's like our guy, let's say, and my first coach was one of his students, 12.
It's funny because the story, the more I talk to people, especially across the world, the more I'm starting to, sort of put together a larger history of improv, like, where did it really start? Because, like, in the U.S., there's a lot of talk of it starting with the Compass Players in California. And then the Compass Players traveled east, and some of them went to Chicago and started Second City. And then people went to Second City, and they were like, yeah, I like that, but let's try something else. And then it developed from there. But that, to me, I think I've only heard it with reference to long form, or what I've heard referred to as Chicago style improv. Though I'm not going to lie, every time people say Chicago style improv, it makes me think of deep dish pizza, because that's the only thing I think of when you say Chicago style. It's probably not the best, that all I can think of is pizza. But every time people say that, they're like, oh yeah, well, I was like, here we call it long form, and then the theater sports style short form. But it's, I really feel like, like you mentioned, some of the teachers that talking about it coming from, theater further along, like, this isn't just a new art form. This is stuff people have been doing for a long time. We've just found new ways to communicate it.
Yeah, I think I'm not saying that we invented this first or it happened here before. I'm just saying that probably in different parts of the world, I think that there were different schools and different reference people that maybe take this as a new idea and then started something. I'm pretty sure that in places like in Asia, they have also their own reference and their own gurus and their own teachers that have been doing it for many years. Maybe they never heard of Johnson or the Chicago style or anything like that. I think that, at least in my opinion, from my hometown or my home country, not a lot of people is able to speak other languages, in this case English, or are able to travel other countries. So it's quite likely actually that they've never heard of this before.
That's true.
Because I guess that 60 years ago or something like that, there was no Johnson books in Spanish.
Right.
I don't think so. I don't know, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure one guy translated it, but he didn't give it to anybody else, But
maybe.
There's got to be the first guy, right?
Yeah.
So, how many languages do you speak? And by that I also mean, how many languages do you perform improv in?
Well, Spanish is my first language. English is my second. I won't say that I'm that fluent, but I think I can express myself a little bit and also perform. And French.
Fluent.
Sorry?
I'm going to say you're fluent. I'm going to put this
okay.
of approval on your fluency, okay?
Oh, thanks. You can fill out the immigration later. And French, please sponsor me. And French a little bit. I had 3 years back in high school, and I really like French. French language, but I need to get better. I need to practice more. And in New Zealand, it's not really, I don't have a lot of chances to do that either. But that's one of my goals, to get better in French as well.
I imagine that New Zealand spoken English is much harder.
Well, actually, I grew up watching Hollywood movies or TV shows, right, like Friends, and I guess I never had really formal English education besides basics in school. I would say that I learned mainly from music and movies, and then eventually video games and just traveling. But I never went to like a real formal education about English.
Wow, you're really making the argument for don't take a class, just immerse yourself for real.
But if you really like something and you get exposed to that, I guess that makes it way easier. And considering about New Zealand, well, they have a completely different accent and slang, which is quite different. Maybe more similar to British, I would say. Like, I spent like 5 months in the US a few years ago. I had a winter job over there. And I remember that was my first really actually professional exposure to English. And I also, to living in an English-speaking country, I remember things like, I don't know, trash can. Okay, that was simple. And then I went to New Zealand, and it's called rubbish bin. And I was constantly referring to the trash can. I was like, no, what's that? And they were not joking. They didn't understand what was it.
Well,
rubbish bin.
In their defense, it's really far away. Like, the U.S. and New Zealand are not close.
Yeah.
It seems very unlikely that people are, like, anyone who travels from one to the other is amazing. It's like, oh my God.
You have direct flights. You have direct flights from Auckland to LA, San Francisco, Hawaii, and it's not that expensive. So hopefully this integration with these two different cultures maybe can start happening.
Oh, I like it. You're selling it good. You're like, tickets are not that expensive. You and Christiane saw each other at a festival in New Zealand, correct? Was that New Zealand or Australia?
Australia.
Oh, okay. What was the name of the festival you were just at?
It's called Improvention, Canberra Impro Festival.
Now, in your journey of this year, like, what number festival was Improvention? Was it the first one you went to on your year of, like, improv, or is it, like, number 5 or something like that?
To be honest, it was only my second, because I started this trip in June after spending some time in San Francisco and then in Europe. I went to Russia for the World Cup, the soccer World Cup. And after that, I went to Italy and Spain. It was around July. And I was asking around, okay, what's on? And people were saying, no, there's nothing on. I mean, so it's over, it's summer break. So you have to come back August, September. And I was like, but I'm here, I'm already here, you know? And I decided to keep traveling and come back later. So I went to Japan for a month, and that's where I met Christiane for the first time. I actually met Christiane and Mike in Tokyo, and they invited me to perform with the Pirates of Tokyo Bay group.
Oh, how was that?
That was really fun. I was one of the guests for the show, and I remember we played some games in Japanese and English, and they also asked me to do some Spanish, and it was really fun. It's a big group, a lot of people, very talented people, and they only perform once a month, I think. But it's quite fun.
Wow. Yeah, that must have been a wild experience with the Japanese audience and half in Japanese. What a wild trip.
Yes, I really like how they do their show. One of the forms that I have with my troupe, it's based on the fact that you have different languages. So it's like a bilingual or multilingual if you have more than two languages. And it's the one that we perform in festivals in New Zealand and Australia. So for me, the languages difference and opportunities are really important. And the way they do it, it's quite interesting because it's kind of like they do one game in Japanese and then one game in English and kind of like that. They go switching. But the way we do our show, it's called Living La Impro Loca. The way we do it, it's combining languages and just a big mess of things, and it's like a melting pot. I like to call it that way.
That's fun. So tell me more about your show, this show that you're talking about, the format that you have developed. Is that with your group? Is it Mabel Impro?
Yes, it's Mabel or Mabel in Spanish.
Sorry, Mabel.
No, it's fine. It's actually one of the purpose of that name is it can be pronounced in English or in Spanish. The show is called Living La Impro Loca, and we've performed it a few times already in Auckland and also in festivals in New Zealand and in Australia. So pretty much we thought about this because we have our group and it's only with Spanish-speaking members of the group, right? So we do our shows in Spanish. But we wanted to be also integrated with the local audience and local performers. Because I'm also a member of another group in Auckland called Impro Teatro, which is in English. So I wanted to kind of like mix them, and I thought, what's the option to do this? What we have to do this, and we thought that there's two options when you have different languages. There's two paths you can take. The first one is you can try to pretend the language barrier is not there. You can try to pretend it doesn't exist, and you ask for the audience to be forgiven, to forgive mistakes that you can make in another language, right? And it could work. You can have a show in English and with people that's not fluent in English, and it still can work and it can be fun. But you have another option that is to take these differences that languages have and use them as an advantage, as a challenge. So it's more like a challenge. We challenge them and they challenge us in the show. And we have games that involve both or many languages that you can have. For example, in Australia, the show, we have games or scenes in English, Spanish, Italian, French, German, Polish, and Hungarian. 7 different languages that we perform in the show in Australia. And that was amazing.
Wow. Are there just people from all those countries like there, and that's how, and you just happen to come together as a troupe and that's why they can do it? Or do you just have some really great, like, smart people who, soaked up a bunch of languages throughout their life?
We can do both, actually. There was a couple of people that, for example, was from Poland, and there was like a troupe from Poland that went to the festival, and we include 2 of them in our show. But there was one guy, it's a really talented improviser, it's called Flab, and he speaks like 5 languages. So that was amazing because we can use him in different games in different languages. And it also was a challenge for him to do improv in languages that for him is maybe not that common to do improv.
Wow. So do you integrate all the different languages into every game, or are there particular games that lend themselves better to the language melting?
Initially, we have only a few games that can involve different languages. And some of the games were just games that just maybe use more physical activities or maybe more like gibberish. But as we keep doing the show, I keep thinking about new games. And for example, in the last show in Australia, every game we did was related to language differences. So for example, one of the games that we do is kind of like a scene replay kind of game. So we have, for example, two performers doing a scene in Spanish, right? And on the other side of the stage, 2 other performers that don't speak Spanish but speak English will see that scene, will watch that scene, and they'll have to replay that scene they didn't understand what was the dialogue about, but they saw what was happening. We had to replay that physically, the scene, with another different meaning because they didn't understand dialogue about it.
Oh, that's great. Oh, absolutely. That's such a smart way to use that. And then it just begets so many more scenes because you're like, well, I think this is probably what happened. And like, there's maybe one person who really knows. The best part, too, is that like there isn't really a fact checker in the back who's like, nope, that's not what happened.
Exactly. And we usually do it in New Zealand in English and Spanish only. Because also it's a way for audience to practice a new language, which is not really common thing to do. Or it's not really common thing to try sometimes, but you don't have the option to do it. So attending to these shows, at least you get a chance to be exposed to a different language, to different expressions, to different vocabulary, to culture as well, music as well, because we have a live musician in the show as well. And games like this, we have, I don't know, like 10. We just keep rotating them and performing them in different shows.
That's so great. So I think I realized that I have never asked you, like, how did you get to New Zealand? Like, what happened? Well, you were taking classes in Argentina, you were into it, you were performing with that theater, and then all of a sudden you live in New Zealand. How did you do that?
I have to say that I was really happy in Argentina, and especially when it comes to improv, I had a really, really big group. The show that I mentioned you about, that probably the group when I first started, it's a really, really big group. It's about 100 performers. And we have this like a competition, like 13 different teams, 4 people per team, and then we have a second division as well. So every Sunday is a show going, and it's like 400 people every show, sold out. And for me, I mean, for being my first experience with improv, it was amazing. I mean, what's after that? That was amazing. And besides improv, I have my job, I have my flat, my family here. But I always wanted to try to live in a different country. Well, I like traveling, and I wanted to have more working experience in English, mainly. And New Zealand was one of the countries that people from Argentina, we had a chance to apply for a 1-year working holiday visa. And you can just go for a year, and then if you have the chance to find a job that wants you to stay longer, you can stay longer. And that's what happened. And I just started working there. I met some really cool people there, met some really good friends. And then when I was settled, I thought, okay, what's next? I need to do improv again. Then I joined the local group, but it was in English, and it was really, really good, but it was not the same. So I also decided to start with a really big, good friend of mine, Paul Nicolas. We started this small workshop for Latin people. And then it becomes to be a really huge group with now 2-3 different levels. It's more like an improv school now for Spanish-speaking people. And I'm super excited about it. And it's a really big project that now I'm leading with some other friends, and it's definitely something that is right now taking me back to New Zealand every time I leave the country.
Wow. Are you still in New Zealand? Are you still doing software engineering? Or I guess not right now, but like, were you?
Right now I'm in Argentina. I'm in holidays visiting my family, and also doing some workshops, running some workshops here, and hopefully also running some shows. I quit my job in New Zealand when I decided to travel last year, and I'm planning to go back in the next few months after attending some festivals in Europe, hopefully, and also heard about the new festival happening this year in June in Sydney, in Australia. Apparently, it's going to be the first edition of this festival. I'm really interested in hearing more about it.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just wondered if when you were in New Zealand, like, did you when you moved to New Zealand, has it been all theater all the time, or did you also work with computers when you first moved to New Zealand?
Yeah, when I first moved, I started looking for a job related to what I studied when I had more experience doing, which is software engineering. And I started working in an e-commerce company, Mm-hmm. And so I worked for pretty much almost 2.5 years. And at the same time, I started this improv group. And eventually I was trying to invest more of my time in my improv project more than my software engineer job. So hopefully, I don't know how to think about this, how to reinvent myself. Hopefully in the next year or so, I will be able just to do part-time software engineering and more time spending on, again, I keep saying spending, but for me it's more investing time in improv.
Yeah. It's a great, I'm happy for your goal. I think that is a really wonderful thing. And I'm just really like psyched about the idea that you're doing it. And I'm just happy that you have the opportunity to do that kind of thing and that you're taking the chance. I mean, there's so many people held back thinking they can't leave the small town that they're from. It's amazing not only that you were brave enough to say, yeah, I'm going to live in a different country, but also now that you're like, and now I'm also going to take out the, safety net of this computer job and really try to live the full life. See, that's really legit. You are living the lifestyle that I want to share with my audience. Like, when I started doing these interviews, it was so that I could show people all the possibilities that there are for them out there in the world. That, a lot of people feel held back when they're performing, or they feel like, well, I can do it at night, but I have to keep my job. And I'm always like, you can do whatever you want. If that's what you want to do, great, but don't say you have to or it must be this way. And I love to hear that you're taking this chance and doing it and making it happen, because it's empowering and it's exciting, and I'm glad that so far it's working out for you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for those words. I really appreciate it, and I think that sometimes I don't take the time to think about that and to realize how lucky I am and how thankful I am about these possibilities that I can have. Of course, that it took a lot of effort, and it's a daily effort, and it's an ongoing process. But at the same time, I think that also I was lucky with the decisions that I made. When I was younger, when I decided to study software engineering, which is a really, really demanding job, and it's a lot of countries are also taking people from other countries to work in that industry. And I know I can pretty much work anywhere in the world. And this gave me the chance to keep traveling and discovering all the passions that I have, because it's really well paid, and usually you just work 8 hours a day and then you go home and then you can do many other things. You don't have to keep worrying about that when you're at home as well, which is great. I'm not saying that every job is the same, at least the ones that I choose like that. But yeah, I think about that, and I think about the fact that I need to sometimes just make a pause and look back and be able to realize all the things that I have achieved, and that also it's been possible because of the people that I have around and the family and friends that I've always been supporting, and it's also their success, not only mine.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, you're so kind and sweet to receive what I said and say, yeah, I'm so lucky. I'm like, you work so hard. I can't believe you worked so hard. for me, I'm like, the effort, I can't believe how much you have done. Like, it's just the idea, like, just even separate the idea that you're traveling and doing all the improv stuff, which is like totally like amazing and great. But the fact that you went to New Zealand and were like, hey, I'm going to start a new group. Not only are you going to start a new group, you're going to foster a place that makes it more comfortable for other, like, expat Spanish-speaking people to work and hang out together. Inclusivity, okay, great. And you've developed, like, your own format so that it's like, hey, not only are we creating, but we're also learning and developing new, like, an openness to all sorts of languages. Also, the idea of your format, the fact that the languages are mixed together is like, it's almost like, this is going to go crazy. I'm sorry, I'm going deep here, but it makes me think of, like, the Tower of Babel. I don't mean to bring up the Bible, I'm gonna. It makes me think that, like, it's the Tower of Babel before all the languages got, like, shaken out of it and everybody talked differently. And it's like you're bringing it back together, and the idea of improv. Now, I've said this before, but I kind of think improv is like a new religion, like a religion without, not a God-centric one necessarily, but sort of, because it's like, is kindness not something, you know, is taking care of your fellow man not exactly the whole idea, right, of all the religions and stuff? And in improv, all you do is look out for the other guy. When something happens, you just got to go with it, you know?
Yeah.
And that easy flowing nature is like, it just makes me think of, like, bringing everything back to, like, what is pure. There aren't languages. We're just animals having conversations with each other.
Yeah.
Let's do it. And it's
Definitely.
there's something, like, I don't know, so beautiful and artistic about that idea. It's really fascinating.
It's funny you mentioned that, because when I was in Wellington in the festival there, in the New Zealand Impro Festival, they asked the directors to talk a little bit about their shows when I present in the opening night. And I was preparing this speech. I was so nervous about it, because it was like, it's in English, it's my first festival, and I'm not only attending, I'm also directing a show and running a workshop. I was so nervous about that. And when I was preparing my speech, the title was Improv as a Universal Language. And that's what I really believe, and that's what I base my show on. Because also you mentioned about the group that I have in Auckland, and it's not only about the languages. I was able to create a safe space for people to interact in their own language, which is not that easy to find in a really remote country. And also being able to allow people that want to get better in Spanish to be included as well in a really safe space. And we used to have a girl from France, which speaks Spanish as well, and she was one of us, and there was no difference, even that her Spanish was not great. We included her really well and was part of our group. And we had this kind of like quality. I think people is really easy to get along with and to start friendships out of nothing. And when we started this group, a couple of weeks after we started the workshops, the guys were just hanging out, you know, just in the WhatsApp group. They were just, hey, let's go for beers. And yeah, let's go. And they were celebrating birthdays together. We were going camping together. So I really like to think that we really create a difference. We make a difference for them and for us as well. I suddenly had a really new and interesting group of friends that I didn't know before, and improv was responsible for this.
Yeah. And it's just getting bigger and bigger with all the traveling you're doing.
Yes.
Wow. Man.
Well, Christiane leads to this podcast as well. So I also have to thank her. I think that improv in general is really kind atmosphere and environment. I think that the values that we we put in our scenes and our work together, we also put it in life and interacting with our partners outside the stage. And I can really see that. I can feel that. And I think I'm not the only one.
Oh, absolutely. I really feel like here in Austin, my theater that I started at, it recently kind of crumbled because the people that were running it were not being as kind as they should have been. Like, we were talking about how, you try to infuse kindness and inclusivity into your scenes and into your environment so that we can help communicate on a larger scale. And I totally believe in that for improv. Like, I think that it is the reason why so many people make fun of it is because it is kindness without pretension. It's a person being all totally themselves and being completely accepted without reservation. And there's not a place for that anywhere in the world. And when I was taught how to do it, it filled me, the spirit of it. I've been teaching level 1 classes for years, teaching people it's safe. You're in a good space now. And when I found out that the people who were my bosses, the people who took care of me and taught me, were being jerks to people and talking behind people's backs and like just doing things that people shouldn't do in lots of different ways. I won't go into tons of the detail, but it broke my heart to think that a person who could associate with improv would do that kind of thing. And since then, kind of the whole town, there's 5 long form improv theaters in Austin, and then 1 theater sports just opened up again. We haven't had theater sports in a long time, but theater sports just opened up again. And like the official, trademark theater sports.
Yeah.
But the whole community, when it came out in public that these people had been misusing their power and had been, giving opportunities to some people and shunning other people and kind of just being snobby about it and not really like, this girl's cute, I'm going to give her a show. And it's like, but did she earn it? Was she the one who, that kind of stuff. And the whole town was like, no, this is not happening. We kicked those people out, and the space where I was has been reinvented. And every theater in town got together, and like all the leaders of the theaters in town got together to make sure that everyone had like a policy written down and enforced that was about a safe space and taking care of each other and making sure that what happens on stage is highbrow, good stuff, kind-hearted stuff, and not, gross jokes or mean jokes or, putting people down. And so I'm a big fan of, I'm, old enough now that when negative things happen, I just try to be patient and say, when negative things happen, there will be positive that will rise above it. And it really did. And I hear what you're saying about your group in New Zealand, and I'm so glad that you guys have that from the start, that kindness, because we had to figure it out because somebody was a jerk. And we had to be like, wait, we don't want jerks around here, and then made a no jerks rule. But it's great that, like, from the minute you guys started, you had that going. I feel like that's culturally, that's a big thing right now, is, like, making sure that there are safe spaces and that people are kind to each other. I think there's a lot of anger and meanness in the world, and we're trying to combat that with improv as much as possible, which is amazing.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that also is the thing about generations. And I think that younger generations are really making a big difference, and are really making a lot of things happening for us, especially considering that the Latin culture is super emotional, and it's easier to be involved for us, and also it's easy to relate to other people and to feel comfortable. It's quite easy and quite fast in a group of people that you share the same interests. And when it comes to improv, again, I realized that it was about the group, and then it was about improv. First, it was about the human group and what we can do for them, and providing them space to, again, be able to meet other people in the same frequency, with the same needs, with the same goals. And we build things based on that. We create magic because of that on stage. And if we didn't have that, we probably wouldn't be able to do improv as we do, or in the way we do it. And for us, it's easier to get connected to our emotions on stage, to real deep relationships on stage as well. But also because we have learned from previous experience what we don't like, and what we want allowed to happen in our group.
Yeah.
It's important to be aware.
Younger generations, that they stand up for themselves and really insist upon kindness, because I think that's the most important part. Sometimes I worry, certainly here in the U.S., there's a lot of it's like kindness backlash, where like if somebody's mean, the response is to be meaner, and I'm like, no. If that person's a jerk, being a jerk back at them doesn't solve the problem. Like, you can't.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You know, like, it's not going to change anything. It's just going to make everyone angrier, and then everyone's defensive and got a chip on their shoulder, as opposed to like letting down their guard and really being able to experience either, improv or life in general.
Yeah, I think that I'm really lucky to be in New Zealand, because it's such a nice country, and the culture is so polite. People are so polite, so friendly, so open-minded, and I compare it to other countries in the world, and where violence is everywhere, where people is mean and they're into themselves, but they only care about themselves. But New Zealand is completely different than that. It's all about you and also your partner, people you have next to you, and your group, and not necessarily your close group, but everyone. And everyone is kind to everyone as well, because there's no need to be aggressive, there's no need to be violent, there's no it's really peaceful, and it's super easy to create stuff when you have that atmosphere in your country.
Yeah. What a great community you have. That's so nice. I'm so glad that you were able to find such a thing.
Yeah, and it's not only my group, the whole country is like that, especially if you go to small towns, small villages. People is just so pure and innocent, and they trust you. They will first trust you, and then we will see. Not the opposite.
Yeah. That sounds nice.
It's pretty nice. It's a very nice country. You should visit sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. When I saw everybody at Improvention, I was like, ooh, that sounds fun. And then New Zealand Improv Festival seems like a pretty big deal one as well. So
it is.
Yeah. Right now I'm trying to just leave my house. I have a 1.5-year-old baby, so if I get anything done, it's a miracle. But slowly but surely, I'm figuring it out. And I'm taking him on trips, too. So I'm taking him next week, a week from today, in fact. I'm taking a trip with him. And we're going somewhere where I'm going to go teach improv festivals and he's going to hang out with my mom. And it's
nice.
like, great. Like, I'm glad I figured that out. Now I need to be like, go on Facebook.
Baby steps,
like,
right?
Who wants to hang out with my baby? I'll come to your town and teach improv, and you can hang out with my baby.
Baby steps.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There's
to New Zealand bit by bit.
Yeah, there's a really cute couple that I met in Wellington in the festival, which, by the way, it's an amazing festival, so well organized. And the guys just put a lot of energy, guys and girls put a lot of energy in the festival. It's amazing. But I met a really cute couple, and they both improvisers. They're both so talented. It's called Liam and Amanda, and they traveled from Melbourne to the festival in Wellington, and they took their kids. And it was like I don't know, maybe 9-year-old kids. And I can imagine that a kid just growing up, being exposed to all these kind of things, is gonna be an amazing artist.
Yeah, maybe. Or like an accountant who never goes to the...
Yeah.
It's like, oh, God, don't make me go to the theater. Like...
He's already funny. And doing faces and everything.
Yeah, I saw something... something on my Facebook feed. I saw something about a 5-year-old winning an improv contest. And I was like, that's pretty amazing. Like, I don't know. I see so many things pass through, but it was something like there was an event where there was a maestro, and, you know, they're competing, and then the winner was a 5-year-old girl. And I was like, that is so amazing. The fact that, like, she was so on top of it to maintain. That being said, I've seen some pretty amazing kids. Occasionally, because I teach theater as well as improv, so occasionally I teach summer camps for kids, and then I do a workshop here and there for kids who are taking classes in, like, film and commercial. And sometimes I see these kids, and it's like, wow. I'm like, let me write your name down, because someday I need to put it on my resume that I taught you, because you're going to be famous. Like, there was this girl
going to be famous.
and I can't even remember her name, which breaks my heart. Like, I can see her face. She was like Meryl Streep at 8 years old. Like, she did this scene, like, the teacher, I was doing improv exercises with them to help them get ready for a presentation that they were doing, right? And so when the teacher came in and, like, made them do, you know, little scenes for me, I was just like, oh my God, like, what? Who are you? How do you even understand the breadth of emotion you are putting out there? Like, what? So, yeah.
They're just natural.
Yeah, so wild.
So talented.
It took me a long time. You said that you got into improv in your 20s. I didn't find improv until I was in my 30s. I was just in regular, like, stage plays. Somebody else wrote a play, and I worked on that play. But the world of creating it on my own was something I had to find. And so
it happened when it had to happen, right? It just was the right time, and it was just then. Maybe you weren't ready before that, and that's it.
Yeah. That's how I feel about everything. I'm not really... I hate to be one of those people who's like, oh, I'm mad I didn't get to this earlier, or like, if only... It's like everything is falling in the exact way it needs to fall.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Exactly. Maybe you were not ready to enjoy it that way.
Yeah.
And it's great that you mentioned about kids. I think that there's so many talented kids, not only about theater, but about anything. And right now, I feel that something needs to change about education in general. Like, I think that talents and kids being exposed to the things they like, not being considered enough. I think that, for example, I was talking about this with my friends the other day, and kids go to school, and then, like, for 6-7 hours, something like that, with, I don't know, 8-year-old kids. And then they go back home and do homework with their parents, which they're already tired from their job as well. Why not being able to take them to the movies, or take them to the theater, or to singing lessons? No, they have to do homework for the next day. And then you have to spend a couple more hours, and then dinner, and then that's it. Go to bed. I think that's, I don't know. I don't think that's fair and for kids. And I don't know. it's maybe off topic, but I was thinking about that the other day.
No, totally. I accept off topic of all kinds. No worries. No, I think that you're right. I've actually thought about that. My husband and I talk about how the setup of school as it exists, where kids go, like you said, like 7-8 hours a day, and then they do homework at night, and the problem too is that like the setup of what they're learning, they really need to throw a couple practical skills in there, because guys, I appreciate algebra. I do. I understand that Pythagoras worked real hard on this, but we have to let it go. Like, figure out who's going to be a carpenter and then teach them, because not everyone needs this information. And to the point that you're saying, which is that you're right. I don't think that the education system really looks at individuals. When my husband and I talk about school, we talk about it as if it's kind of a training ground for like regular drudgery jobs. It's preparing these kids for a life working at McDonald's, or like for a life
office job
in an office. Yeah. It's like, I get that there's a lot of possibilities to have a job in that. So why not get them used to that kind of schedule? I understand, sort of, but I just wish that, and I appreciate the idea even of like, well, we will keep them in school while you are at your day job, and then, so it's like, okay, I get it. It's like long-term babysitting, but it's too much long-term babysitting and not an education of the individual child. Because we're talking about actor children that we've met. There are probably kids out there that like have figured out, software engineering, like just from video games, or they just take apart their home computer and they're like, yeah, I figured it out. Kids are smart. And sometimes I really think that you always know what you should be. And that a lot of times the reason why we end up doing other things is because other people tell you, oh, well, you've got to be practical. Oh, well, you've got to do whatever. And I'm like...
yeah, make money.
Yeah, I'm like, guys, there are all sorts of jobs. Why is one specifically more dependable than another? Like, he likes to chop trees. He likes going in the woods and messing with trees. Let him work with trees. We need somebody to take care of that. It's not like the kids, and I get, I'm sure there's plenty of kids who are like, I just want to watch TV all day, or like, I just want to play video games. But it's like, could you figure out how to turn that into something? Like, okay, great. I'm sure there's a job where you have to stare at a screen all the time. The TV watchers can do it. You need something where you need to navigate through a computer system in a less than normal way. Maybe a video game kid could figure that stuff out. Or explore the world, because they're like, well, I'm not afraid to explore it on my video game machine. I'll go to Egypt and dig up fossils, or whatever the things are. I think that you're totally right, that we're not educating any individuals. We're trying to create a mass of people who can handle doing dumb jobs.
Yeah, I think that maybe most likely kids have to be exposed to probably the same kind of things at the beginning, but then it's easy to detect what are the things that have more abilities or that they enjoy doing more. I mean, I knew it since I was like 10 years old when I was working with computers, a software engineer or something like that. But I still had to go through biology classes and that I didn't like. But it was part of the curricula, whatever. I had to take those classes in a way. So what's the point?
Your love of computers is actually just your love of theater, or do you love them both separately and equally?
I think it's something that's super dynamic. Before discovering my improv side, I was never. I was like, I cannot see myself doing anything related to theater. I was super shy and super into myself. Well, like a lab rat, right? Like a nerdy guy, nerdy kid. And that's one of the reasons that I started doing improv, also to being able to feel more comfortable to speaking in public and doing things, meeting new people, new friends, and it really, really helped me. And actually, in the last 2 years that I've been working in New Zealand, I was working as a team lead. So I was having a group of developers under my supervision. I was leading them. And I cannot tell you how many times improv tools helped me going through different situations that I had to face when I was working as a team lead.
Wow.
It really helped me, and probably wouldn't be able to take this kind of jobs if it was not because of improv and theater in general.
I wondered if maybe there was something about the work you do with software that was similar to what you do with your show. Like, are you bringing ideas together? Do you have to figure out how to make one code communicate with a different code? Like, I'm sort of trying to force a connection, so it's okay.
There's a really big connection. It's actually a really big connection because a software engineer, actually, it's more the actual degree or name is information systems engineering. It's more like, but software engineering is easy to understand or to explain. Yeah. But actually, I had a lot of different courses around project management and human resources and different kind of resources you can have for a project. So I think that I'm planning projects as well. So I think that a lot of these things, skills that I've learned in university, I'm applying right now in my improv project. Maybe not necessarily in my formats or running my workshops, but having the project that you have, like, okay, what are the things that you want to do? What are the things that you need? What's the planification looks like? What's the schedule? Okay, we have workshops on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We have shows on Saturdays. We have to make sure that we have enough time. We have to make sure we have enough money. So all these kind of things that are around leading a project or handling a project that I learned in university, I'm using every day in improv.
Yeah. Wow, that's great.
It's really helpful.
You really seem to soak up everything and use it really well.
I think that I've learned different sets of skills in different areas. Like, because of theater, I learned some skills. In university, doing engineering, I learned some other skills. I also studied multimedia design. I learned some other skills there. And I think it's just about combining everything that you learn in life. It's just like that. For example, I don't like to say that, oh yeah, I'm a software engineer or I'm an actor. No, I studied software engineer. I run an improv project. I studied to be a director or a coach or an actor, but I'm not defined by what I studied. There are things that I have and things that I know, but I'm not defined by them.
Yeah, plus there's such a longer journey. When people define themselves by a single thing, it's like, you're going to be alive for a lot longer. You better have one. Like, you could be 1,000 different things.
Yeah, exactly.
I try to be open to, whatever new thing I need to learn, whatever new situation needs to happen, and try to be adaptable to it, which I think is another improv skill. Yeah. I remember I taught a workshop, and it was like a group thing where there were a bunch of different teachers, and we were all teaching a little section of the day. And I was listening in as one of the other teachers was mentioning the idea that no matter what happens, no matter what, in a scene, you have to go with whatever happens. Even if you were building up a great joke, you're building up a whole thing, you're like, really got this whole thing going. We're in this hospital. Everything's going crazy. If somebody swings in and says something that really takes it on a new direction, you got to go. It's like, there is nothing worse. And I appreciate the people that stand for the integrity of a joke or the integrity of a path or whatever the audience is watching and expecting. But nothing looks worse than a person who's like, I don't accept your contribution to this scene. We're going to do it my way. And when he said that, when he was like, the most important thing is to just go with it. The most important thing, no matter what, it trumps every level of joke creation. It trumps every level of whatever you think you're doing. The number one rule is just go with the flow. Let it happen. If you thought you were a piece of cheese and now you are an alien on Mars, that's what's happening. Like, go with it. And the idea of that just in this moment really hit me. Just really hit me hard. Like, oh my God, that's it. Like, that's everything. Like, to be able to live your life in such a way that you really and truly can just let go and live whatever happens. Like, I know that you thought that you were on this path, but turns out you are on a different path. To be open to that, I think, is one of the biggest life lessons that I've taken away from improv.
True. Definitely. And I think that it definitely also affects life in general. It inspires other things as well. This about being able to do on stage about, okay, I'm going this way, and all of a sudden, oh, actually, I'm going that way. Taking that also to be able to do it in life, and probably that also is a thing that improv helped me doing, and thinking that it's fine. It's fine. You can do that, and no one's gonna be hurt. And worst case, you just learn from that experience, and then you just go back to whatever you were doing. But being able to try and to take your chances and to follow your passion and your heart, that's the main thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So right now, you are in the midst of a journey. You're trying to see the world and see what you can bring to it as you teach your workshops. What is the thing that you're thinking about right now? Like, when you teach your workshops, what's the big lesson that you really drive home? And with it, you don't have to give away anything that people are paying for, but each one of us as artists, as we go through our journey, sometimes we're thinking about this thing, and sometimes we're thinking about, sometimes we're really focusing on the yes and. We're really into it. We're like, yep, you've got to keep add information. And sometimes, like I said, I'm focused on the going with the flow. That's the thing that makes sense for me right now. I'm trying to go with the flow in my personal life. I'm like, it's fine that the baby doesn't let me go out at night. It's fine, So what for you is the thing that you've been thinking of and if there's no particular jam or thing that you're thinking of right now, then what was the last big lesson that you learned in this journey that you're on?
For me, the festival in Australia was really, really interesting. I think I discovered a lot of things about myself and about the things that I can do, because I was able to learn from a lot of really talented people, and at the same time having them as a cast of my show. That was really a breakthrough moment. Being able to learn, and then from this 30-year experienced people, and then have them in my show performing the form that I bring to this country. That was really something that make me think people in improv is truly really kind and open-minded, and they're willing to work with you and to also share the knowledge. And it's something that we don't find in many places. So mainly I would just be grateful. That will be the last thing that I took from this experience. Being grateful about what I can achieve by doing improv and by sharing this knowledge with the people that are super talented and have been doing this for decades.
That's great. That's a wonderful lesson. I'm soaking that up from you as well, because a lot of what you've said during the course of our conversation has been like appreciating the journey that you're on, and I really like that, you being so cognizant of this journey that you're on and trying to be a better person as you're on it is just, it's really great. Thank you so much for talking to me. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with me and for sharing it with my audience. I really, really appreciate you being able to be on the podcast.
Oh, please. It's my pleasure. And I really, really thank the opportunity as well. Thanks, Amy, for having me in your show. And it's been amazing. It's been really, actually, I've learned a lot about myself as well while talking to you. And it's always really nice and comforting to have someone with this experience as well to tell you their thoughts about yourself and what they think about you and your journey and your experience and your lifestyle as well. And it's been really comforting as well.
I'm just excited I get to talk to you and live vicariously through your adventures.
Thanks. I'm really happy for that.
Thanks for listening to Yes But Why Podcast. Check out all our episodes on yesbutwhypodcast.com or check out all the content on our network, HC Universal, at hcuniversalnetwork.com.